Good afternoon, SEMA. Welcome to the Collision Repair and Refinish stage. This afternoon, I have my good friend Tim Gardner with me from Snap-on, and I don't even know if some technicians know how many different genres Snap-on is in.
Yeah.
So you've got the John Bean family, you've got the Car-O-Liner family, and we're using your tools in our body shops every day.
Yeah, you know, that's right. And for the Car-O-Liner brand especially, a lot of folks didn't know that Snap-on acquired Car-O-Liner back in 2016. But when you look at Snap-on equipment and the family of brands that we have, if it touches a vehicle outside of a spray gun and a spray booth, we probably have what you need.
Absolutely. So this afternoon, we're going to talk about structural holding during the repair.
Right.
So we're basically going to look at the Car-O-Liner brand inside your portfolio, and we're going to talk about EVO, right?
That's correct.
Excellent.
So let me just flip to the first slide here. So I'll go through several of our kits and then pause on a slide so we can discuss a little bit more about what it actually does. But EVO 1 is our first level of holding and fixturing. So EVO 1 is used to lock down known good areas on a vehicle so that when pulling force is applied for realignment, that known good area does not move.
So those 4 pinch weld clamps aren't enough, right?
Well, so 4 points with pinch weld clamps or 4 points, let's say there's lots of vehicle manufacturers that don't allow for the use of pinch weld clamps.
Sure.
And the vehicle may just be sitting in 4 pegs or 4 pins. So that's fine to get the basic setup, so now the technician can measure that vehicle, diagnose where the damage is, but ultimately before anything is cut or pulled, we need to put in another 4 or another 6 points of holding on that vehicle.
Absolutely.
So EVO 1 gives us our basic holding to be able to lock down against pulling forces. I'll change the slide here. EVO 2 expands on that ability to hold. So we look at it and say, here's what we would typically need to lock down, for lack of a better term, a unibody vehicle. But we also need to be able to lock down and hold full frame vehicles. So EVO 2 gives us that extended ability to hold not only more points, but points on different types of chassis and vehicles.
Sure.
Yeah. So next slide is one of the more basic types of holding. So this is a chassis that we were kind of just playing around with in one of our training centers, and it was a new chassis, and we pulled some sway into it. And I want to tell you, the strength of the steel in this full frame chassis is not what it used to be.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
So this would give a technician the ability to, okay, I'm going to pull some sway, but I know this area is good. Let me block it. So just where that sway or bend is, I'm pulling to the point where now everything's correct and I can cut and replace if needed.
So this all comes back to doing a good fundamental measuring of the vehicle and isolating where the damage is first. That way we know where is that known good. How far did that collision energy transfer into that frame or vehicle?
Yeah.
And how far back do I have to go before it's good?
That's right.
And then isolating that damaged part from the rest of the vehicle.
Yeah, that's right, Scott, and that's a really good point. So it's get the vehicle set up onto your straightening platform or your bench, your rack, and then diagnose what the damage is so you know what medicine to put into it. So sometimes we use the analogy of an MRI, right? Or if you went to the doctor and your arm hurt and you thought maybe I broke my arm, and the doctor looked at it and said, well, no, I think you're okay, go home, and maybe touched it a little bit, you might not have the confidence that you got the right diagnosis. But if you took an x-ray or if you took an MRI, you'd probably feel a lot better about that diagnosis. And that's what technicians do when they thoroughly measure a vehicle. And if a vehicle is hit in the front, we still need to measure the back of the vehicle, because when damage and force enters, it doesn't just go, let's say, go down the rocker panel and shoot out the end of the rocker panel. When it gets down to the end of the rocker panel, now it's going to hit that support that's at the end of the rocker panel and go across the vehicle.
Sure.
So if we're hit on the right front, maybe we need to measure the left rear as well.
Well, especially on a full frame vehicle. On a full frame vehicle, we see that energy travel really all the way around the frame.
That's right.
Where we can end up with a diamond situation or a twist situation. More of the unibody stuff, we don't see that as often, but we still see the inertia from the collision having effect on the opposite end of the vehicle.
Yeah, and so we don't necessarily see much of the damage until we measure, right? Or until we put our fixtures up, if we use fixtures to measure. So I'm going to go to the next slide. And this is an example of when we get into some more I don't want to say complicated, but some more sophisticated types of holding. So this is, again, on a full frame chassis, but we're locking down two suspension areas that we know are good, we don't want to move, and we don't want them to lose any shape as we apply pulling forces and stress relief.
Absolutely, because otherwise you're going to introduce new damage to that car as you try to pull out the original damage.
Yeah, exactly. And picture that type of a setup on a unibody vehicle where maybe you take out some suspension in the back and you have a bolting pattern in there, and you don't want that to lose shape because it is a steel vehicle and you will be doing some pulling to an adjacent area. So we need to lock down more than one area at one location, and that's a good solution to that situation. So I'll go to the next slide. And one of the things about the way we approach this is with Car-O-Liner, it's a system. So it's kind of like building blocks. We have the rack, we have the measuring, and they all work hand in hand. And then our fixturing, our holding, our EVO system works hand in hand with our vision system as well. So once we measure, then we can go into the vision software and look for recommended areas to lock down and hold. Now, we can hold any area on the vehicle within reason, but the software will recommend to the technician, okay, here's an area that should be locked down. It's a control point, and here are the pieces that are required to hold that area. So the technician could go to the tool storage and pull off just what he needs to lock down and hold that area.
Sure, because there's a lot of pieces hanging on the wall, and if you don't have a roadmap of how to build that attachment, you're going to be doing a lot of figuring it out.
Well, you could do some head scratching and then say, you know what, maybe I just don't need to hold that area as much as I initially thought.
Yeah, but having the good directions on there, and you guys have even put in some video action in there to show you how that attaches and how to build that.
Yes.
Which is really helpful.
We did.
Thank you.
Yeah. And just as a reminder, it's with us, we help build methodology and solutions, but the OEM says how it should be fixed. So we just have a reminder on there to follow OEM recommended or required procedures.
Absolutely.
So we saw EVO 1 and EVO 2. And that's, again, to lock down areas so that they don't move if there's pulling involved in that repair. We also have EVO 3, which is specifically used to lock down and hold a frame rail, an apron, a strut tower, any part that's going to be riveted, glued, bonded, or welded onto the vehicle.
So this is for the new replacement parts that we're bringing into the repair.
That's correct.
So I notice a lot of the EVO 3 stuff is aluminum or plastic. It's not as the heavy steel that EVO 1 and 2 are that we can actually pull off from.
That's correct.
And that's not what it was intended for.
Right. So it's aluminum pieces, and we do that so it'll work with aluminum vehicles. And when we initially came out with EVO 3, we were looking at solutions for aluminum vehicles. But as we look at vehicles like some of the a new Honda Accord, let's say, I think the strength of the front rails on that vehicle are to a point where straightening isn't always an option. So some of the repairs, whether it's steel or aluminum, are almost the same because we're not going to be pulling.
Yeah.
Right?
Or we're going to be pre-pulling to replace.
That's right. So, right. The pull would be to get the parts that won't be replaced into position so that then we can cut and do our replacement.
So like on a Honda Accord, we've got rear rails that are 1500 MPa. We're not allowed to straighten them for repair, but if it's buckled in and we've got damage to a quarter panel or something like that, we could pull that rail and straighten it to get that quarter panel to lay back out, and then we'd have to replace the rail no matter how it pulled.
That's correct. So it's similar to an aluminum repair in that respect. So that EVO 3 is for that replacement procedure. And in this example here, it's actually fairly interesting, and we set this one up for a specific reason. So this is that same full frame chassis, and we saw with EVO 1 and 2, we blocked and held. We did some pulling to the extent that we needed to align the rest of the chassis that wouldn't be replaced, cut per the instructions from the OE, and did our replacement parts. On one side of this chassis, we used EVO 1 and 2 to lock in that new replacement frame tip. And on the right side of the vehicle, we used EVO 3.
Yep, so you can notice the difference. You've got the heavier iron stuff on the driver's side of this car and the aluminum fixture on the other side. And for a replacement, it really wouldn't matter which one you used.
That's right, but there's a different procedure to doing it. So with EVO 3, before that replacement rail tip is put into place, we would take our vision measuring system and the recommended EVO components per the software and build that fixture in time and place on the machine, and then set the replacement part on top of it. And then we could take those same components and use it on another vehicle. So that's the universal nature of it. And Car Aligner from its inception has always been a universal product.
Yeah, so unlike some other products where we're actually using a tape measure or something to set that fixture, here we're using the three-dimensional measuring to determine that that fixture is in space exactly where it belongs before we even set the part.
That's correct.
Excellent.
Yep. Well put. So I'll move to the next slide. So EVO 1 and 2 is accepted or approved by many of the OEM manufacturers around the world. We're in a lot of the OEM training centers, and we're very proud of that fact because there's some prestige to it, but we're also very grateful because of the knowledge we gain by partnering with not only ICAR, Society for Collision Repairers, CIC, but with our OEM partners, because then we're able to share. We're able to learn and bring that to our product offering and that ultimately to our end users.
Excellent. So quick story, when I went to Japan, we did some structural training over there, and I was so thrilled to find out that they had a Car Aligner bench and they had EVO 1, 2, and 3 on the wall, and they had a vision system sitting there. I'm like, it's thousands of miles away, but I've got equipment here that I'm very familiar with.
Yep, that's great. I love that story. So I'll move on to the next slide. So this is a shameless plug for our hands-on Car Aligner videos. So about a year ago, it's maybe slightly more now, we had this grand plan to bring some of our training people and our engineers over from Sweden. We were going to cut a car apart and weld it back together and videotape the whole thing. And I hate saying COVID because we're all sick of hearing that.
Amen.
But COVID did put the kibosh on that project. But we still wanted to move ahead. So the hands-on Car Aligner video series gives a good background and outline of what the products are and how they're used in a way that whether you work on a vehicle or not, you can get an idea of what EVO is and what a vision measuring system is.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So they're going to cut us off real soon here. It's been a pleasure having you today, Tim. And Where do people find that video training? Where do they go to find that quick before we go?
So the hands-on video series is on YouTube, and it's also on the Car-O-Liner.com website.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Scott, thank you so much.
Have a great SEMA show.
Pleasure. You as well.